Today, we're in a quiet little town called Gibson City, Illinois, which is home to the Bloomer Line Railroad, an incredibly unique Class 3 short line that serves several grain elevators in the area, as well as Norfolk Southern, Canadian National, and Toledo, Peoria, and Western. This railroad owns less than 10 locomotives, and all but 2 of them wear the colors of the now extinct CB&Q Railroad. Get ready for strange operations, first-generation EMD Jeeps, and maybe even a mishap or two, all on the Bloomer Line, Illinois' most unique Class 3 railroad. We've come here just in time. These 2 1950s-era GP10s have just started their work for the day. Their only job is to take a cut of grain cars from Canadian National and put them in storage on the other side of town. Over at the Canadian National Yard, we catch some good old flat switching action. If you would like to see this same kind of action, all I have to say is good luck. Business on these little short lines is incredibly slow, so they only run trains on an as-needed basis. However, due to the fact that Bloomer's main products and customers are agriculture-based, they're most active during the harvest season from September to early November. But even then, they still don't run on a set schedule. What's very interesting about this switching job is that there's multiple conductors, and they don't ride with the train. Instead, they just stand by a switch, throwing it when needed, and they follow the train around town in work trucks. Even though these methods might be a bit unorthodox, they're actually really efficient. This is some of the quickest flat switching I've ever seen. Even though the Bloomer Line wears Burlington Roots colors, their heritage is actually rooted in Wabash and Illinois Central Gulf, as they were the original owners of all 50 miles of Bloomer's tracks. In 1985, Illinois Central sold a section of less than profitable tracks between Herscher and Barnes to the newly created Bloomer Shippers Connecting Railroad. And just 5 years later, in 1990, the young company saw massive expansion when it purchased 18 miles of track from Norfolk and Western, extending its reach south from Risk to Gibson City. That single purchase was easily the best business move this railroad's ever made, because today, Gibson City is Bloomer's headquarters and biggest source of revenue. As switching continued, I noticed an unfortunate semi-truck driver had stopped just a little too close to the tracks. While most drivers would try to back out from under the crossing gate, this guy's actually doing exactly what you should do. Nothing, because backing up will just scratch up the truck's paint and certainly damage the crossbuck. After a couple hours of switching, all the hoppers were finally sorted out, meaning they're ready to be stored in one of Bloomer's few yards. Storing rail cars is a very common way for short lines everywhere to make money. When big railroads have an excess of rolling stock that they don't want gumming up their tracks, they usually find smaller railroads or dedicated facilities to take them, and it's quite a win-win. The third party that stores the rolling stock will get paid anywhere from $2 to $50 a day per car. Prices depend on what kind of cars are being stored and what they're carrying. Sometimes, rolling stock will sit in storage for months or even years, giving the holder a steady flow of cash, all while keeping lines and yards on big Class 1s free and clear for more important uses. One thing that's great about small railroads is their friendly crews. All the information about today's train movements was gathered by simply asking the engineer and conductor what's going on. If you ever find yourself in a position where you're able to ask an active train crew about their duties, it's important to remember that they are at work, so be sure to keep your questions respectful, brief, and to the point. Don't hold them up, and certainly don't ask them questions when they're in the middle of something, like throwing handbrakes or directing train movements. Distractions can easily turn fatal on the railroad. If you just read the situation and find an appropriate time to ask, you'll find that most crews on railroads big and small will be happy to inform you of their train's duties. We catch back up with the GP10 duo on the other side of town as they put these hoppers in their extended resting spot. These could be here for a few days while a local elevator preps to load them, or these could be here for the next year. Their next assignment's in the hands of natural supply and demand now. Bloomer only has one rail yard that doesn't belong to a grain elevator, and it's incredibly small, so the majority of these hoppers have to be stored on one of the railroad's few sidings. These tight quarters definitely make things interesting, especially for conductors who have to coordinate the placement of cars in such a way that they won't obstruct railroad operations or the flow of traffic around town. On top of that, conductors don't have instructions for how rail cars should be switched. All they've got is a stack of papers that says we need these cars here and these cars here. Now make it happen. So they have to come up with all the train movements and switching patterns by themselves, sometimes on the fly. This jointed rail mainline really makes you wonder how old these tracks are. In hindsight, I should have taken a look at the dates on the rails. Regardless, I wouldn't be surprised if they date back to the days of steam. After putting up all the cars, this decades-old pair of Jeeps can finally rest. Classic EMDs just seem to last forever, and these locomotives are a prime example. They've been in continual service for almost 70 years, and it's all thanks to their design. Until recently, EMDs were way overbuilt. I've been told by veteran mechanics that it's impossible to overload GP9 traction motors, and all vintage EMDs have two-stroke engines with very limited electronics, keeping things as simple as possible. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these early Jeeps continue to work until they turn 100. They proved their longevity and reliability a long, long time ago, and even today, they ain't showing any signs of slowing down. A couple cranks of the handbrake by the conductor signifies that this has become a job well done. While we might be through seeing moving trains, there's one more thing worth mentioning. On the outskirts of town, parked at an Alliance grain elevator, sat a Torpedo Tube GP9 rebuild, arranged for long hood forward operation. It's nothing short of incredible that this thing has survived all these years nearly unchanged. This engine served alongside steam locomotives, as it was built in 1956 for New York Central, It continued to see use on Penn Central and Conrail before it was sold to various small railroads. Today, it lives a quiet life at this elevator, switching cars whenever there's cars to switch, and occasionally going for a spin on the main line. I don't think it's left this yard in several months, or possibly years, but it's good to know that classic equipment like this can still be found earning its keep. After all, the best way to preserve a machine is to use it. Thanks for watching. If y'all enjoyed this video, consider checking out some other ones of mine. Also, maybe pass yourself by the merch shop. Anyways, till next time.